on Prime Crime.
Taylor, it seemed like she was getting paranoid towards Friday.
The case of a missing woman that had authorities baffled.
What's your thoughts? There's more to the story.
Multiple theories arise.
As a private investigator, you have skills to not be seen.
I had a lot of different characters that, were persons of interest at some point.
And the evidence that tells a different story.
What were y'all doing out there at this farm?
Hey there everybody, I'm Jesse Weber and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. A woman disappears, and the question becomes not only what happened, but is someone responsible?
On September 8, 2017, in Pensacola, Florida, 33-year-old Taylor Wright suddenly goes missing.
Like, I would send her a text every now and then, didn't get any response. I was just trying to stir up casual conversation. I text Taylor a couple more times, no responses.
Wright's disappearance really didn't make any sense. She had been living with her girlfriend Cassandra Waller and had a son from a previous marriage. Interestingly, though, Wright was a private investigator.
As a private investigator, you have skills to not be seen, just like an undercover role with a police officer. So it would have been very easy for her to disappear.
Did Wright disappear on her own, or did someone do something to her? Investigators start looking into several people.
Cassandra, as an alternative suspect, was another place that the police would reasonably look.
Waller would explain that Wright had cheated on her.
Whenever I found out about Taylor, kind of having this relationship that she didn't end with this other girl, and I told Taylor to get out of my life and everything, and she kept begging and texting me, please, just hear me out, meet me at Ash's house, and at 5:30 the next day. She was like, I'll confess everything to you and Ash. And I thought it was a little weird that she wanted Ash there, but at the same time I was like, good, a friend's gonna know what you did. A friend's gonna know, the shadiness that you had contained within you.
At one point, Wright's friend AshleyMcArthur is brought in for questioning.
You know if Cass is part of it?
I wouldn't think so.
Not only does she talk about Wright's relationship with Waller, but she mentions something very interesting about Wright's ex-husband, Jeff Wright.
The story that I get is that Jeff was the aggressive one, and that he was the one that would be, volatile and violent with her. I know she was trying to hide money from the Jeff situation.
At the time of her disappearance, Wright and her ex were in an apparent legal battle over the custody of their son.
The way that she put everything to me was like she was just trying to get her life together, to get her kid, to get back on her feet, and that Jeff had done so much, to her to take away all of this money that she had and everything else.
In fact, according to McArthur, Wright even withdrew money from a bank account she shared with Jeff and entrusted the cash with McArthur.
She didn't want her name or anything to be on anything that Jeff could find.
Sure.
So I was like, we'll just keep it and give it to you or whatever.
It's common practice in divorce proceedings, especially when they're tumultuous, for a spouse to want to hide money. And we know that the money was withdrawn from Taylor's account, and we know a cashier's check was given and handed over and deposited into McArthur's account.
Cassandra and Jeff, two people with close connections to Wright, seem like viable suspects in the case.
Anytime we have a homicide, obviously a significant other, a spouse, a girlfriend, a boyfriend is always kind of, a person of interest. But once, we were able to talk to Jeff Wright, we were able to talk to Taylor's girlfriend, I think it was clear that they had absolutely no involvement.
But who else would have a motive to harm Wright?
So, Taylor, it seemed like she was getting paranoid towards Friday. She was talking about how she felt like something just wasn't right with Ashley.
There are three important things to remember with AshleyMcArthur. First, it was revealed that Wright had wanted her money back.
Taylor had been trying to get the money out of Ash's safety deposit box. Taylor said for 4 or 5 days. And Ash kept making up excuses and everything.
Second, on the day of her disappearance, McArthur said she drove Wright to the bank to get the money.
she was like, okay, well, Ash is coming over. We're going to go to Ash's bank, and we're going to pick up my money and stuff out of the safety deposit box. Ash had pulled up. We hugged, we kissed, said, love you. I went my way.
And 3, AshleyMcArthur, a crime scene technician, is believed to be the last person to see Wright before she vanished.
Do you know who harmed Taylor?
No, I don't. I don't believe Taylor's been harmed. I think Taylor's doing what Taylor does.
I think her behavior in the interrogation was enough to raise eyebrows. She did not behave in a way that would be consistent with someone who had empathy for the victim.
I mean, this is a pain in the ass for me,
Sure,
you know?
sure. Hey, all of us.
Well, I mean, it really is, because like now I'm stuck with all of her stuff at my office, just trying to help her. And of course, the story that I get is a very sob story about how Jeff's taken all this money and now she's just, you know, trying to hide it and move it and do all kind of just shady stuff with it. I mean, who does that?
She also behaved in a way that I believe was cavalier. She seemed to be making jokes and really putting down the character of the victim, which is not a good look when you are genuinely concerned about someone who is supposed to be your friend.
I do think McArthur's behavior in the interrogation room was suspicious in that we noticed that she was talking in the past tense of her friend.
I didn't know who she was until a lot of this, because what I knew her to be was one thing, and now what I'm finding out is
We're hearing that.
something totally different.
At one point, McArthur's then boyfriend is brought in for an interview, and he provides quite the insight into this woman.
How well do you trust Ashley?
I don't trust her at all.
You don't trust her with your freedom?
No, hell no. I catch her in too many lies.
Does McArthur know more than she's letting on? When we return.
She's always carrying weapons, whether it's knives or guns or whatever. She's not an easy target.
In 2017, private investigator Taylor Wright goes missing. Investigators learn that on the day of her disappearance, Wright had been hanging out with her friend AshleyMcArthur, who's believed to be the last person to see her. McArthur appears to suggest that Wright isn't in danger.
She was fine. She just said that she wanted to go have a beer and that she was going to get an Uber to take her to go have a beer.
When McArthur's interviewed, she says that Wright had asked her to hold on to some money of hers, as Wright was in the middle of a divorce from her ex-husband. Text messages reveal, though, that Wright needed that money back. McArthur claims on the day Wright disappeared, she returned the cash, and Wright carried it off in a duffel bag.
Your feelings on all this missing person and her talking to you, what's your thoughts?
There's more to the story. I don't know. She's point blank said they are not going to find her. She took that money and left.
What do you think about that?
Don't make no sense. The girl ain't gonna leave her kid.
While McArthur appeared to be forthcoming about details, something just didn't seem quite right.
Would you mind if we what's it called? Dump the phone?
Forensically examine your phone.
Yeah.
We don't look at anything. I don't know if like must be. There may be embarrassing pictures there. We're not worried about
Yeah,
that.
we're not concerned about that.
It's all professional. We're looking for one thing. We're trying to find Taylor. Is what we're trying to do.
Oh, yeah, I don't mind.
Ashley's first police interrogation was kind of annoying, to be honest with you. I mean, I felt like she was kind of giggly. She was kind of giddy. She was almost kind of flirty with law enforcement. Her second interview was completely different. Her body language was different. Her tone of voice was different. She was definitely much more somber. You know, she probably knew at that point she was in some trouble.
You know, we've turned up some things that we don't really know what to think at this point.
Law enforcement discovered that McArthur had deposited $34,000 of Wright's money into her own personal bank account, and they believe she hadn't kept it for safekeeping.
We found some bank records that drew some questions. Can you tell me anything about you and Taylor and any sort of involvement with any businesses?
I believe AshleyMcArthur killed Taylor Wright Taylor Wright needed her money back and it was gone. Ashley had spent it all.
McArthur's then boyfriend even suggests her financial situation was a bit curious.
The girl spends money on everybody around me.
Yeah.
Everybody. It's not uncommon for her to spend money on everybody.
However, it would be argued that McArthur was just a generous person, didn't have any money problems, and didn't need Wright's money. McArthur even defended herself.
What happened to this money after you deposited it?
A lot of it I used because it was payment for the money that I had been given to her.
Then there was the matter of what McArthur says she and Wright did the day of Wright's disappearance. She claimed that after returning Wright's money, the two had gone horseback riding at her family's farm, went back to McArthur's house, and then Wright left. McArthur says she never saw her again.
When we started plotting all the phone calls that you and Taylor were making that day, there were some discrepancies in what you had told us.
The records indicated that the day after Wright went missing, Wright's phone pinged off of a tower near a wedding in Alabama, a wedding attended by McArthur.
The cell phone tower evidence is very important. And now we always have to remember that cell phone records are not a smoking gun. It is always left up to interpretation. But the cell phone records later showed she was actually texting from the same location that the defendant was located when they supposedly, according to the defendant, were not together at that time.
Is it possible that McArthur had Wright's phone after she vanished? Let's go back to Cassandra Waller, where she describes the text conversation she had with Wright on the night of her disappearance.
7:58, Taylor sent me that text. I'm not mad at you. I should have called. I just need some time to think. I'm trying to get my life organized and back on track. At like 11:54, 11:55, Ash texts me a screenshot of what Taylor just sent her. The text that I told you where Taylor sent Ash a message saying, I'm okay, I'm not doing anything bad, I'm just stressed out with the move in court, and I need a few days to myself.
It's actually a common practice for somebody who murders somebody to pretend that person is still alive by communicating with family members to make believe that they had run off somewhere and disappeared. But what trips them up is the pinging and cell tower location services that they're able to pick up. Even the texts themselves are not the same type of words or verbiage that is normally used by the person who has gone missing or disappeared.
The cell phone tower records revealed something else as well.
We know that you didn't go to Milton when you said you went to Milton. Not when you said you went there.
Oh, well, I don't know what.
You went that evening. What were y'all doing out there at this farm? I know y'all were there.
We picked up some stuff that Taylor had there that, you know,
What was
that
there?
she would store. Some kind of lockbox that she had.
Why would you not tell us that originally?
Because she asked me not to tell anyone ever.
It's not going to fly.
I gotcha.
Okay. Where is Taylor at?
I have no
You need to tell us where she's at.
I don't know where Taylor is. I don't have a clue.
Up next, we finally learn what happened to Taylor Wright.
I think something happened and you're trying to forget about it, personally. Okay. Where's she at?
I don't know where she
Where's
is.
her body at?
I don't know where she is.
She's dead, though. We
I
know
don't
that.
believe that.
In 2017, Taylor Wright vanishes, and now authorities believe her friend, crime scene investigator AshleyMcArthur, is behind it. Financial records indicate that McArthur may have stolen Wright's money, and cell phone tower data appears to show that not only had McArthur been using Wright's phone, but the two had visited McArthur's family farm on the night of Wright's disappearance.
So you're the only one that was with her on this day at this farm that you did not disclose to us?
I didn't do anything
Let
to
me tell you
her.
this, if she's at that farm, we're going to find her because we're executing a search warrant out there right now.
It's that search of McArthur's family property that finally reveals what happened to Wright. The missing woman's remains are found, a skull with a bullet hole buried in a shallow grave. AshleyMcArthur is then arrested and would later be charged with first-degree premeditated murder.
What I believe happened is on September 8th of 2017, Ashley picked Taylor up under the guise of going to this bank to get Taylor Wright's money. I believe at some point during their time together, Ashley probably made up some excuse as to why she needed to go out to this family property that was, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I believe Taylor went along for the ride. And I believe once they got out to this area, which is a huge piece of property, I believe Ashley shot Taylor in the back of the head.
Yet is McArthur the killer? No DNA or murder weapon could be linked to her. It also couldn't be determined when Wright died.
Lack of DNA, lack of an actual weapon or smoking gun, and moreover, lack of an actual certain time of death is a strong indicator that it may not be the person that you think it is.
Maybe AshleyMcArthur, though, could get away with the perfect murder.
As a crime scene investigator, she would have the tools of knowing exactly what to look for. The forensics, DNA, trace evidence, looking for a murder weapon, anything that was in the vicinity that the police would be able to use and photograph for later identification.
Then there was the Home Depot footage. Wright's remains had been covered with concrete and potting soil, which authorities say McArthur can be seen buying the day after Wright went missing. Just a coincidence?
They were doing some work around their house on Raintree, not only in the basement, but there was some yard work going on, and a new deck had recently been built. The state had all this time, and they made no effort to do any type of forensic testing of this to say, yes, this is exactly the same potting soil, because they knew the brand. This is exactly the same concrete.
I have no question that the concrete AshleyMcArthur purchased at Home Depot is the same concrete that was put around Taylor Wright's body.
Coming up, does the state have enough to convict McArthur?
State of Florida versus Ashley Britt McArthur. Verdict as to the charge in count 1.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law&Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
Welcome to Prime Crime Tonight.
Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law&Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law&Crime.
Think all court shows are the same?
We're talking about your father. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Think again. Judge Caprio rules with common sense.
I was having contractions. I was rushing to the hospital.
Inspector Quinn, what does justice demand? Jail?
And compassion.
I'm going to take the circumstances into consideration.
The best court experience I've had.
Clearly, Judge, he's been in a court before.
Get caught in Providence.
Tell us what happened.
I think at this point I need an attorney because it seems to be that y'all think that I did something to her.
In 2019, AshleyMcArthur is on trial for the murder of her friend Taylor Wright. Wright's decomposed remains were found on a property belonging to McArthur's family. The government alleges that McArthur killed Wright over greed.
This defendant was supposed to be holding Taylor's money, not spending it. Taylor needed that money back, and that money was gone. And the day Taylor was with this defendant to get her money back, then Taylor was gone.
Prosecuting the AshleyMcArthur case was, it was extremely difficult. She didn't look like the typical type of person that's gonna go murder somebody. I had a lot of different characters that, were persons of interest at some point. For me, it was concerning and difficult to make sure that I could piece it all together to paint a clear picture that AshleyMcArthur was in fact guilty of murdering Taylor Wright.
McArthur's attorneys pointed to the fact that there was no solid evidence tying their client to the death of Wright.
The evidence will show you that the state's case is built on, yes, lies told by AshleyMcArthur, a motive she may have had, things that she did, ways that she lived her life that you may not like, but their case will not be built on eyewitness testimony. It will not be built on physical evidence or scientific evidence.
Circumstantial evidence cases on murders are the hardest to prove. And you need a combination of a series of circumstantial events in order to put the case together. She was the last person seen with her. She was reported missing. Her cell phone was with her. The fact that we have video evidence of her buying concrete and potting soil prior to that and knowing the way that we found the body, and also when the police officers were able to trip her up and catch her in a lie.
We knew McArthur's statements to police got her in trouble, but what we didn't expect was what she also allegedly told others prior to Wright's death.
What did Ashley say to you about Taylor that night?
That the world would be a better place without Taylor.
After hearing all the evidence and deliberating for a little over 2 hours, the jury made their decision.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Ashley McArthur, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder with a firearm as charged in the indictment.
I think the initial feeling when the jury returns a verdict of guilty is just, it's an overwhelming sense of relief, of comfort. Certainly there's a level of gratitude for the, toward the jurors for doing such a great job. And then of course there's always a feeling of justice for the victim, and in this case for Taylor Wright.
Obviously we're very disappointed. I mean, we put years of preparation into this, and we thought we had built a good defense. Obviously Ms. Jensen did a great job. She had a lot of really good evidence on her side, but disappointed.
I'm going to sentence you to life with a mandatory minimum 25 years state prison.
When I look back on the Ashley McArthur case, I think about Taylor Wright and I think about her son and how they're missing out on each other's lives.
I was there when Taylor came into this world, and I'm here today. Taylor was taken too early, and she was not taken through an act of God or through illness. She was taken through human behavior that was very cruel. And I could go on, but it's just such a tragic story.
Pretty scary to think about the murder of Taylor Wright when you consider it was one of her closest friends who betrayed her. But as clever and resourceful as McArthur seemingly thought she was in covering up her crime, it was investigators and the jury who saw right through it. That's all we have for you here on Prime Crime. Leave us your comments on Instagram and Twitter with the hashtag PrimeCrime. As always, thank you for joining us, and until next time, be safe.